All right, let's go over your box plot practice. All right, so here at the beginning, I did these by hand. These were not too large of a set of data that you could not, you could have done these by hand. Now, I do want to point out to you, this one had 16 pieces of data. So we're going to kind of get a little technique going because that's going to help us on our lesson that we're going to be doing today. So remember I had talked to you about how to determine where that median's going to be without actually like doing your little finger thing. Because when we had a whole bunch of pieces of data, and when we do that in a histogram and stuff, okay, so I'm preparing you for later in this unit, you're going to need to be able to tell which piece of data is that median Q1 and Q3 without doing your little finger thing, okay, or without the calculator telling you. So here we had 16 pieces of data. So if I divide that 16 pieces of data, then I get, of course, divide it by 2, divide it in half so I can find my median. Okay, then that's, of course, 8. So because that is a whole number and not a partial, then I know I am then taking this 8 and splitting it with the bottom 8 and splitting it into the bottom 8 and the top 8. So because of that, I can tell that I have to average the 8th and the 9th piece of data to get my median. So I added those and I got the middle 33. So that's why my median is 33. Now I have this bottom 8. So here I have, and it's not on there, it's here. So I have this bottom 8. And of course, splitting that in half puts it in between the 4th and the 5th item. So I'm going to have to then average those because it was an even number. So anytime you have an even number, you're going to have to average. So here I had to average those two. So that's how I got those. Now, then I did my IQR, the fences, and as far as I can tell, if I did the math right, then I did not have an outlier. So there's my scale, my box, my fences. Didn't need them because I didn't have outliers. And then my whiskers. Because I had no outliers, they went to the min and to the max. And don't forget to label, label, label. So there's that one. Here we have this one. So this was only 10 pieces of data. So I split it into 5 and 5. Splitting it into the 5 and 5, put that median in averaging that 5th and 6th piece of data. So I averaged the 55 and the 61, and that's how I got 58. Then Q1 was 44, Q3 79, IQR 35. That put the lower fence at negative 8.5. So this lowest piece of data, negative 3, is not below the lower fence. You have to have data below the lower fence to be a lower outlier or above the upper fence. And so 145 is above the upper fence, so it's an outlier. So scale, box, fences, whiskers. So here's my scale. I know I got to go from like 0 all the way up to at least 145, maybe I'll just go at 150. So because that is such a big range, I do by tens. I'm going to go by tens. So there I start, 0, and I go by tens all the way up to 150. And sure enough, I did not get my lower fence on there. Scale, box, well, actually, let me put my box on there. 44 to 79 with the median at 58. Fences, lower fence wasn't on there, but the upper fence at 131.5 is. Scale, box, fences, and then whiskers, but let me get my little outlier. Put your outlier on right there is 145. And remember, your whisker does not touch the fence. Your whisker does not go to the dot, okay? So don't let your whisker go to your dot. Your whisker does not go to the dot. So if 145 is my dot, then I've got, I'm going to go to the next piece of data inside the fence. So the next piece of data inside the fence is 83. That's why my whisker just goes to 83. All right. Now, I went through putting this in your calculator in the video about how to do that in your calculator. And so I'm just not going to go over that here. You can go back and watch that video of how to put this in your calculator and get your 5-number summary. Now, once you get that 5-number summary, you then need to go, you have to do this by hand here. So there's my IQR, 47. My lower fence, Q1 minus 1.5 IQRs, was way down there at negative 40.5. Upper fence at 147.5. So based on that upper fence being at 147.5, I can see here that I am going to have an upper outlier. My fence is going to come between 135 and my 151. So scale. I'm going to do my scale from 7 all the way up to 150. I'm going to go by 10s because that's a pretty big spread, pretty large range. So 0, go by 10s, and I went up to 150. I guess I should have put 160 on there. Scale, box. There's my box from Q1 to Q3 of 77, median at 46.5. Scale, box, fences, no lower fence, but the upper fence at 147.5. Fences, whiskers, and that whisker will not touch the dot. The whisker will not touch the dot. It will not even go past the fence. It doesn't touch the fence. Doesn't go to the dot, doesn't even touch the fence. It goes to the next piece of data inside the fence, which is 135. So there is where my whisker goes to, and I do go to the whisker down there at that minimum. So there's that, and label, label, label. Don't forget your labels, and that's how you make a box plot. Moving on, here we have this, okay? So this one had a lot of outliers, actually. So what happened was, first of all, I said, oh, that's a lot of data. So I definitely did that in my calculator. I put it into my calculator, and I did one variable statistics. So my one variable statistics gave me a min of 21, Q1 of 30, median of 34, Q3 of 41, and a maximum of 80. I did my IQR. Q3 minus Q1 is 11. My lower fence computed to be 13.5, and my upper fence computed to be 57.5. So at this point, I need to look up in the data, and I'm going to have to kind of go and sort through that and see if there was any data below the lower fence. So I want to see, is there anybody lower than 13.5 when they got their first Oscar? And I do not see that. Now, I think there was a girl, let's see. Can't remember her, Dakota Fanning. I think she got it whenever she was a young, maybe even not even 13.5, but maybe this is old data and doesn't incorporate that. I'm going to look that up after we get off of this. But anyway, so then my upper fence is 57.5. I know I have some past the upper fence because my maximum at the very least is above it. So let me go and look. So I had to then go through all this data and find the numbers that were above 57.5. So I circled those. So that's what I did. I went through all the data, found the outliers that are circled above 57.5. So every piece of data circled gets its own dot on my box plot. Okay. Now, then I also remember I'm going to have to think of what is the next piece of data inside the fence. So that means I need to find the next piece of data that is below 57.5. Okay. And so the one that is right below 57.5, I guess closest to that was that 50. So that tells me that's where that upper whisker will go to. Let's do it. Scale, box, fences, whiskers. My scale just went from 20 to 80, so I may have gone by 5s. Let's see here. Yep, I went by 5s. 20 up to 85, went by 5s. Scale, box. There's my box, my Q1 to Q3 with the median in the middle. Fences, no lower fence needed, but the upper fence is at 57.5. Fences, whiskers, and of course, my lower whisker goes to the min, but my upper whisker goes to the next piece of data inside the fence, and that was 50. Now look at all of this out here. I had those 5 upper outliers, and they are all labeled. I had 60. I had 2 61s, so I stacked them on top of each other, a 74 and an 80. And there you go. Label everything, including this, where that whisker went, just inside the fence, okay? So there you go. Everything is labeled. That's how you make a box plot. And next, here we go. The median was our 64. This one was false because 75% got a 70 or less, because remember, there's 25% in each one of these sections. 3 out of 4 trainers did not get 70 or more. 3 out of 4 trainers, otherwise known as 75%, got 70 or less. So D is true. The bottom 25% was from 50 to 56. And that middle 50%, that IQR was from 56 to 70. Here's the next one. The median was at 6. The B is true because that median is 6 and at 50%. Median is at your 50 percentile. So here was our false one. It's not, they didn't get less than 7. A quarter of them, this top quartile, a fourth is that top quartile, got more than 7. The bottom 25th was from 3.5 to 5.5. And E, our middle 50%, went from 5.5 Q1 to 7, which was the Q3. Yep, 5.5 to 7. Okay, that was the end of that assignment. I hope that you had done well on it.